A very good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're watching us from. This is Awakened Africa, and I'm your host, Bemu. And on our today's episode, I want us to discuss something that each and every black person or each and every African person, if you're an African by descent, if you're an African by blood, if you come from Africa, if you live in Africa, this is something that we should have a conversation about. We should discuss about this thing because right now, in my own opinion, I can say that matters are getting out of hand. And the question is, where did the rain start to beat us? Where did the rain start to beat us? And why am I asking this question? This is because you find out that the rate of poverty in Africa is at a very high, is very high. The rate of poverty in Africa is very high. And it's high time we start to have this conversation. Where are we going wrong? Is it our education system? Is it our beliefs? Is it our culture? What is affecting us? And I bumped into a video by Bishop Joshua Maponga, a very true African son of the soil. He was discussing about the issues or the reasons as to why Africans are still stuck in abject poverty. Africans are still languishing in poverty for ages, since the days of slavery, since the days of colonization. Africans are still in abject poverty. And when we look at other continents like the United, like America, let's say Europe, Asia. These are continents that have so many millionaires. Continents that have so many billionaires. And Maponga was trying to give his reasons or his own opinions as to why we don't have so many millionaires in Africa. So many countries don't have a lot of millionaires in Africa. And why is it that we are still lagging behind as third world countries or as a third world continent? We Africans, what is the problem? Here is the video. I want us to watch it. But before we watch the video, if you are new to this channel, I'll ask you most definitely to subscribe to this channel. And if you've already subscribed to the channel, I'll ask you to like this content, because the YouTube algorithm is going to be favorable to me, and this video is going to be suggested to many people, and we're going to have a conversation at a greater depth. Let us watch the video.
Look into that graph. Look at that graph and find out how religious are those countries that are producing millionaires. I mean, we have more churches in Africa than we have industries. On every corner, there is a church. Like in some parts in Nigeria, in one building, you find 15, 20 churches. Ground floor, second floor, third floor, right up to the top. And some are coming at 9, some are coming at 11, some are coming at 2. Some at 10 in the evening. All of them are just praying and praying and praying. Hey, African people, stop praying too much. Start working. God does not say, I will bless your prayers. He said, I will bless the labor of your hands, and by your sweat you shall eat, not through your prayers. So we cannot substitute our hard work with prayerful lives. Prayer will leave you in poverty. Hear me well. Prayer will leave you in poverty. So we need to learn how to work. Look into that graph and find out these countries that are producing millionaires. What religion are these people believing in? Maybe we need to change the gods that Africa has accepted to deal with these ones here that seem to be economically viable and progressive in terms of helping their own members. Can't be spending your whole day at church. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays, choir, Friday, youth day, Thursday, women's day. What it is practice, then it's practice, then it is all these old age things. The whole week you are in church. When are you going to sit down and start making money? So we need to find out from these countries again what is the recipe of their success. And having discussed that in terms of their labor, we also need to find out what kind of tax facilities that they have in terms of the tax havens. How are they treating their investments? How did they structure their financial systems? You can also find out in those countries that are producing the most millionaires. Find out for me, of all these countries, how many of them have foreign investors in their country. Find out how many of these countries on the top 15, top 20 that have millionaires, how many of them are working with foreign investments? How many of them are working with donor money? You may be shocked that they don't work with donor money. They don't work with foreign investments. And while you're asking that question, ask again these countries that have more millionaires. Who owns their banks? Who owns their banks? Who owns their insurance companies? These countries, who owns their insurance company? And while you're trying to answer that question, answer this one. So who owns their land? Who owns their land? Because land is a means of accessing finances. So you walk up to the top 20 country companies and find out who owns their banks, who owns their insurance, and who owns their land, who owns their industry. And you, just when you thought you had had it all, find out what kind of raw materials have they built their industries on. Are these locally produced? When last did you hear of elections in Sweden? When last did you hear of elections in Switzerland? When last did you hear of elections in Hong Kong? When last did you hear of elections in Singapore? When last did you hear of elections in Denmark? While we as Africans are busy getting confused about these elections, 5 years, find out from these countries, are they democratic? And after answering the democracy question, find out if they conduct elections. And when last did they have elections, including Britain? When last did you hear of elections in Britain? And having answered that, you also want to find out not only about elections, but ask these countries again, how many political parties do they have? These countries that have the most millionaires, how many political parties do they have? How many political parties do they have? You will find that in Zimbabwe alone, when we're heading for elections here, 150 political parties, with every one of them wanting to be a president. So we want to find out what politics, what kind of politics are these countries playing with, so that maybe we can learn a lesson or two also of how to adjust our political system to produce these millionaires that we are hearing and we are reading about here. Are these countries democratic? Do they run elections? How many political parties do they have? And not only that, you also want to find out what culture do these people adhere to that are making the most millionaires? What kind of culture are they built upon? Are they supporting? What kind of ethics and moral? What are their function? What about their science? What is the science of their success in terms of their spirituality? And you also want to find out how they've been able to manipulate their economies to create these millionaires. And what must our students in Africa learn after studying what other countries? You have Switzerland on top of the list. You have Hong Kong, you have Kuwait, you have Australia, then you have USA, New Zealand, Netherlands, Denmark, Canada, Sweden, Belgium, Spain, France, UK, Ireland. And then at the bottom of the food chain, then you have Cambodia, you have Turkey, you have South Africa, Indonesia, Brazil, India, Russia, Mexico, as you're going further up the list. So maybe in terms of our curriculum, I conclude, we need to study this information from the cradle to our universities. Not only to study for the sake of historical study, we need to study the science of creating sustainable communities. And I bet you my bottom dollar all the questions that I'm asking you on the top side. How must we teach our children? How did they make their money? What systems and industries did they build to create such millionaires? What is their value chain? And how and who owns it? How does it function and who owns it? What raw materials are they being used to build these wealth bases? Who owns their banks? Who deposits in them? What tax laws have they used to secure such economy from foreign funds? Are they democratic? When last did they conduct their elections? How many political parties are in these countries? What is their curriculum? And what do they teach their children? What is their relationship to their culture as it also relates to their wealth creation? How can we also learn to manipulate our systems to create such? How much learning do we need to understand that you can never trust your economy in the hands of other people and think that it will be sustainable and you can produce self-sustainable people and create millionaires? It must be part of the curriculum in our universities, in our high schools, in our primary schools, in our cradle roll and crash, how to become a millionaire. We must not be afraid of teaching our children how to make money. And I think if we can go back and do a thorough research on these economies, we can be able to come up with a curriculum of study which our children can get into to be able to reach these same heights of excellence. There's no excuse, Africa. We have the schools, but we don't have the education. We have the teachers, but we don't have the knowledge. We have the raw materials, but we don't have the technology. We have the politics, but we don't have the economics. We have the people, but we don't have the brains. And what we don't have seems to outweigh what we have. Africa is not poor. It's the people who are poor. Continent is rich, but the people on the continent are poor. And they are poor not because of what is underneath their ground. They are poor because of what is between their ears and what is between the ears of their own leaders. Therefore, we go to study such information so that we can come to ourselves, call the Department of Education and say, transform this bush Bantu education, translate it into this which can develop children for the future. We need to go back to our economic books and burn the MP3 squared, what stupid little formulas of the Western world and come around and say, how do we write our own economic books that speaks to our resources and transform our society?
Hello good people, welcome back to the channel. This is Awakened Africa. I hope each and every one of us has watched that video, and whatever Bishop Maponga was talking about, that is the absolute truth. That is the truth. That is the pain. That is the bitter pill that each and every one of us, we as African people from the African continent, we as the black people, we need to swallow that pill. There is something wrong with the education system, because this is according to me. You cannot be having a kid, a 10-year-old kid, going to school, learning the parts of a grasshopper, and while our counterparts in China, in Asia, in an Asian continent, they're learning or they're studying how to program robots, right? To use AI, how to make watches, how to make mobile phones, how to use the internet, how to maneuver each and everything in the new technology. We cannot be worshiping every day. I'm not saying that worshiping or praying is bad, but we cannot be worshiping every day at expense of people losing lives, while our counterparts in Europe, in America, they are studying new technologies on how to combat diseases, using AI to combat diseases. But we are still lagging behind. We still lagging behind. We still having that archaic notion that everything we leave it to God. Some other issues, we need to take matters into our own hands. We need to find these new solutions, because we all believe that modern problems need modern solutions. You can't be having a country in Africa whose banks are being managed by a foreign country. You can't be having leaders in Africa stealing money and stashing them outside the country in offshore accounts in foreign countries, in the colonizers' countries. We can't be living in Africa like that. Bishop Maponga was very much correct. We can't be having our mineral resources, rich resources, being managed by foreign countries, foreign investors. It is not bad for investors to come and invest in our economies, but we cannot be having 75% of the investors investing in economies are foreigners. These people are taking the money back to their countries to develop their countries, while we are left with quarries here. Every now and then you see people fighting in Congo. It's because of the minerals. Every now and then you see people fighting in Sudan. Every now and then you see people fighting because of democracy. Countries like Mozambique, countries like Kenya, countries like Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa. These people are fighting every day, voting every day. Maponga is trying to show us, when was last did you see these countries having elections or holding elections? It's high time that we people of Africa wake up and see what's wrong with us. Should we change our economies, how our economies work? Then we need to go back to the drawing board. We need to go and learn. We need to learn and relearn, right? We need to unlearn, learn and relearn, right? Because whatever we're taking in our heads, in our brains, maybe it is not working out. Why don't we try to dig deep what our ancestors used to do? Because they had economies that were working, they had kingdoms, they had chiefdoms. These people were living so well and their lives were so good. They had their own civilization, a very like something that was very, very, very nice and very good. Like you can check for instance. The civilization in South Africa, Mwene Mutapa, the kingdoms in West Africa, the kingdoms in Egypt, the organizations of communities in East and Central Africa. These were civilizations that had good and running sustainable economy. So it's up to us, we as the black people, we go back to what our ancestors were doing. Let us turn this knowledge into books. Let us put in our curriculum so that our children can study. I don't want to comment much about it, but let us have a conversation in the comments. Of course, I'll ask you to subscribe this YouTube channel, to like my content if you've already subscribed, share this content, and let us all have a conversation. This is Awaken Africa. I'm your host, Bemu. I love you guys. Let us meet in the next video. Peace out.